So we're just sitting here with Tom Porter. So Tom's been helping us out over the summer. 21 years old, studying his Masters of Finance, and we thought it might be a good idea to get him in and just ask a few questions, and maybe I can give some answers on, the generation about three younger than me, I guess it is now, but on maybe some of what their concerns are, I guess, and financially, or how does something work, or so on. So, how's it going, Tom? How has your summer been?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty chill.
Yep.
Haven't really got up to much, but it's good to, get started with you, learn a thing or two about the industry, especially.
So you haven't had your last pay yet. So how's it been going in there? Right?
It's been good. It's been good.
We've been giving him some pretty dry stuff to do, but some compliance work. But he's done a pretty good job. So anyway, I guess 21 years old, last year of uni. I mean, is there anything that you and your buddies down there, are you even thinking about finance of this, or
Well, yeah, I guess it really depends on your situation because you have people that are getting financial help from their parents,
yeah, okay,
rent paid for, etc., who have that supplementary,
yeah,
student loan income that they can then invest. But some people are living, paycheck to
yeah,
paycheck,
a bit,
so they just have to like pay for everything. But I think investing definitely is at the forefront. You're,
yep,
you're getting to that age where it's like you need to start planning for your future and stuff. And even like I saw this thing the other week. It's some ridiculously, even if you're contributing, like I think it was about 100 or 200 a month. Stick that from 21 and keep doing
yep,
it every month until you're like 50. You got a million
million
by your
dollars, yeah,
60,
yeah.
65 or whatever.
I think it's like, is it $100 a week every week for 20 years, and you're a millionaire at 5% or something like that? There's
Yeah.
some compounding interest. I guess that's I guess every now and again someone comes in their 20s, and it's a bit like the people in their 30s or 40s. Everyone thinks they're getting behind, but what you sort of see is most people are pretty similar situation. And the best thing that I reckon you can do in your 20s is try to build that career. You've got effectively 40 or 50 years of work ahead of you. So number one, you want to have a job that you don't mind doing, right, for all that time. But number two, obviously, the more money you can earn over that period of time, the more the more options you've got to save and get ahead, and so on and so forth. So the number one thing, and you're doing it right. We were talking about it on the way here. A guy with a master's degree in finance, you're probably going to have a pretty good job, and so on. That's the number one. But whether it's a trade, we look after clients who are builders and electricians that I could think of top of my head, and plumbers, and whatever you enjoy doing or want to do. If you put your effort into it, and drive it as much as you want to, you can make a good living in New Zealand. We're fortunate that you can make a good living, and if you're starting in your 20s to build that, well, that would be the first thing to say. Um, so student loans, you might be asking, is that they're just coming out when I was at university, and so it was a pretty big thing. We used to march down Queen Street saying no, but most of the guys and girls student loans these
Oh,
days.
everyone.
What
Yeah,
what's course cost these days for a year roughly?
yeah. It really depends on. I
Oh,
think
okay,
it's about 8,000
sure,
or
yeah, yeah,
9,000, something like that.
yeah, okay.
But yeah, I think it varies course to course.
The one thing I know, because people get hung up on the student loans, and it is, it's especially the size of them. I think, like, for a 20-year-old, 50 grand, extraordinary amount of money, and it is
Yeah,
extraordinary amount of money.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But once again, to set yourself up to get that career when it is an extraordinary amount of money, but it's not as giant when you're 45 and 55 to have that sort of amount. But when you're making $200 a week and you got a 50 grand, I know it really weighs on people. The other thing I know about those student loans is that when lenders, when you're looking to buy a first home and so on, it's not treated quite the same as some of your
No,
other debts, and so on. So, you can still, it's not this millstone or albatross around your neck as perhaps some people think,
especially the interest-free aspect
interest
of
free
it,
aspect. Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
it would be unfathomable, if you had to pay interest on it, and there's people buried with 50 grand
yeah,
by the
yeah.
time they're 22.
Yeah, no, that's so, and they change those rules all the time, right? Well, they used to, it was interest from day one. There you go, 30 years ago. But yeah, you know, uh, the point I'm trying to make there is, I know kids, frankly, or young people coming out of university with these debts, but you'd be surprised how quickly you can get it squared away,
Chip away at it, yeah.
chip away at it, and it's not quite that, as daunting as perhaps it might be. And saying that, don't go down and bloody, you still got to be sensible about it all, and so on and so forth. But it's a good little segue that I'm going to do into KiwiSaver, sort of having a chat about that as well. And you are putting into KiwiSaver because we're doing it there. But most of you guys, I mean, most folks, in their 20s and so on,
Yeah,
sort of looking at.
yeah, like, most people, like, because obviously when you're going home from uni, you're just, like, working over summer. Most people I've talked to during that period, they're putting the max
Yep,
KiwiSaver,
great, great,
because it's only, like, you're losing what? Out of a paycheck, maybe, like, $100,
sure.
which doesn't really matter as much when you're at home,
Well,
your
like you,
expenses are paid
yeah.
for, all you have to pay for is, I don't know, drinks on the weekend and whatnot,
If you've
just
got the chance to save, you should save. I guess is what you're saying. I guess that's one advantage of
exactly.
KiwiSaver for the young folks as well is you can't touch it right until you're
No.
so it's squared away for your first home. Generally speaking, that's what folks in their 20s are gonna use it for. So just on that, and it should be that would be my advice. Whatever put whatever you're comfortable in when you're starting to work, even the part time jobs and so on. um, there's a school of thought to say because you're going to be buying a house perhaps in the next 5, 7 years that you should be in a middle of the road, a balanced type Kiwi saver. Once again, that's probably where you get advice. Some people are comfortable going, a bit more growth orientated, but the general school of thought has been a little bit more conservative because you're probably going to take that money out, and the last thing you want is a big crash like happened in 22 or 2008 or 2000 and wiping out half your funds just as about to buy a house, which is a good little segue into home ownership and so on. I guess once again, pretty daunting for 20-year-olds to be thinking, even in Nelson, I don't know what the average house is here, 750 grand or something like that, 800 grand, something like that now, which is extraordinary. It's probably about 300,000 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, do you guys think about that sort of thing, or is it still, overseas experience and then see what happens when you come back?
Yeah, I'd say kinda coming straight out of uni, it's not really like, I haven't put much thought to it
No.
personally, and I couldn't speak for, my peers, but I haven't thought about it much. As you
Yep.
said, you're more focusing about enjoying your 20s first, obviously still trying to get ahead,
Yep.
save when you can, invest and all that jazz, but no, I think that's kinda something you'd think about maybe, like, 7 years
Yeah,
down the
yeah.
line, later
Later
20s, early
20s.
30s, something like that.
And I guess I actually read an article the other day that was the advice, and I'd probably agree with it. Is especially these next 7 years, right, where you just yeah, you concentrate on career to a degree, but you're just living life, eh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, kind of what's the point? Um, but yeah, so KiwiSaver, a really good tool for getting into that first home, and if all you're doing is squaring away a little bit over that time, then you're going to have a nest egg as such. You can obviously use it with a partner if you've got one of them later on in life, to buy a house with. But I know quite often the folks that come in who are in their 20s want to talk about investing outside of KiwiSaver and so on. So I mean, is that something that you and your mates talk about? Sharesies or,
Yeah, yeah.
investing now on those sorts of
I'd say
platforms?
the majority of our mates are set up on Sharesies,
Yeah,
and
okay.
some,
Yeah, cool.
some have 10,000 in the portfolio, some have
Yep.
200,
Yeah, sure.
But I think it's more just about getting it started and
Yep.
starting those contributions so you can almost get into a bit of a routine. Like every time you get your loan, you contribute,
Yep. You
this
pay per
amount.
sale first as well, I guess. So I guess there, what I quite like about those shares accounts and those sorts of things for younger guys, a lot of education as well, right? What's worked, what hasn't worked, and so on. Learning about, what is a share, for example, what is an index fund and an ETF, and so on. So that's where those platforms are really, really good. I go back to obviously I've got vested interests, I guess, but I've seen it enough over time. I know that for long term significant savings, a professionally run like KiwiSaver or portfolio will beat an individual one. No different to a fitness trainer is going to
Yeah.
get you on a better program than you're going to build yourself. Almost guaranteed, right? A decent fitness trainer, um, almost guaranteed. So that's what I'd say there. And the other one we alluded to when we're talking about the latest trend and so on. Like I've seen at the moment it's gold, silver, and and so on. And that was what it was in 2008 as well. But I've seen, a lot of trends come and go and so on and so forth. Honestly, just well, my experience, 20 years plus all the study and so on is, if you're investing is boring. It's just little bits of
Watching
money
paint
squared
dry.
away. It's
Yeah.
what you pay. It's the way it should be. If it's fun, you're doing it wrong, right? Yeah, it should just be boring, slow and steady, and so on.
Yeah.
Generally, otherwise, you're potentially taking a bit of risk there. Nothing wrong with speculating, on some of those things. But yeah, that slow and steady, well run portfolio is going to beat out anything over time. But once again, you get advice.
Mm.
Anyway, that was all I really wanted to chat with you about. I don't know. Was there anything else you wanted
Awesome.
to that's on your mind, or anything you think
Nah,
about financially?
I think you kind of touched over it, especially with the house thing. Like, as to your point, you were saying before how our grandparents probably spent 300 grand on a house.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, I was talking to my nana the other day. I think she said she bought our house for 350, spent 105,000 on renovations, and
yeah.
sold it last year for like 1.8 million.
Jeez.
Just shows you that, like,
Well, you look after her, that's for sure. But
how
that's
how much property, can grow. Like, the capital growth within property is just so much more significant
that's
than any
why
other market.
we say in the New Zealand context, you should try to get into a house. So to reassure you a little bit, I can remember my parents, which probably is 30 grand for a house in Auckland.
Hmm.
When I was born, and then now worth 2.4 million and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That it happens and it happens again. Same with us. Buying a house here in Nelson for 350 grand. It might be worth 750 now, or whatever it's worth, and that was about 2011. So it happens all the time. The houses people buying for $1 million are going to be worth $2 million in 20 years, and all that sort of thing. So it's daunting, as it was daunting for me, when you're coming out and you got no money, and you're just trying to trying to get ahead. But there's a number of ways of getting into that first house. KiwiSaver is a big part of it now. Frankly speaking, parents helping in is the number one way of people, getting
Yeah,
getting into that
absolutely.
first home. And there's a whole number of ways of doing that. And when we have our, mortgage expert in, we'll share a few of those ideas as well. But I guess that's the thing is, don't not worry about it. But yeah, I would always say, hey, when you're ready, get into that house as soon as you can. But also don't panic. Concentrate on getting that good career going and
It's a
making as much
marathon,
money
not
as
a
you want to
sprint.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be what I'd concentrate on. Anyway, thanks for your time, Tom,
All
and thanks for
good.
your help over summer. It's been,
Yeah.
been good having you around,
That's been great.
and good luck next week when you head back down to Dunedin and back into that flat over winter.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
All right, all the best. Cheers.